Yeah, I mean, my ultimate goal, especially now, is really passive income, which is what you're talking about there, is making either a business or an investment that's going to allow me to receive income from it without putting my day-to-day hours for pay into it. So yeah, we've really looked at that as realtors and started with some. We have commercial investments. We also have residential investments that are providing us some passive income. And
Mm.
my favorite is we also have short-term rentals in the vacation genre, which really makes me happy. It's one of my passions, always has been, is to travel and see the world
Right.
and be able to work from anywhere. And so this has really started increasing and giving us the ability to do so by adding more and more doors, whether they be, like I said, commercial, residential, or short-term rental.
Hey, welcome listeners. Today I have the distinct honor and privilege of having as a guest today Larry Bevilacqua on the show. He is currently, his current role, he's had many roles, but his current role is a realtor and team leader at the Royal Team at Seaside Realty. Larry, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. So you have quite the background in entrepreneurship, business ownership, and you've done quite a few things. So I think I really just want to dive into kind of your story and how you got to be in real estate and kind of some of the steps along the way.
Sure. Well, it is kind of a long, winding path, if you will. When people ask me what I did or what I do, I always tell them I'm kind of an ADD entrepreneur because I went to school to be an accountant. I was a CPA for a brief period of time, and from there went into private accounting and became a controller and assistant administrator for long-term care facilities. And from there, ended up deciding I didn't want to work for people anymore and started a business. My wife at the time was a kindergarten teacher and decided as we had our first child that we were going to open childcare centers. So that was my first role jumping into being an entrepreneur, besides some small stuff in the early years with kind of a multi-level marketing type stuff. But we'll skip those. And basically Carola grew from a single center all the way up to about 17 centers throughout the state of Connecticut, which also brought me into the real estate world where I started investing in real estate because we were buying our buildings or buying our businesses, and those buildings were either a a commercial mixed use or residential with a commercial on the bottom. So we were introduced to real estate through that business. From there, I kind of have done a good number of different things from event management and marketing and a photography company and a spa, all kinds of different things that finally led me back to real estate. When I moved to Virginia, I decided, well, I was semi retired and decided, well, let me see what else I can do. And I've always had a passion for teaching. And so when I became a realtor, I decided that I would start a team. And that's the path that brought me to where I am today, where I have a team here in Virginia and we also have a team in Connecticut. So we're managing both those teams, training new agents, and really enjoying the process there.
Wow. Okay. Quite the story. So it seems like your businesses have been a little all over the map, just kind of whatever grabs your attention at the time. Is that what it is?
Well, I think as an accountant, you realize as an entrepreneur, there are some basic skills that give you the ability to run a business. And so no matter what that business is, uh, I feel like I can jump into it. And so, yeah, it was sort of happenstance mostly of who came into my life at the time and what we wanted to do and where we could make some money. And so that's sort of how all of those different businesses came into play. I
Yeah.
was very lucky to be able to have the flexibility to do that alongside while my real estate and my first company is still running. Our childcare company is still in practice. We have a chief operating officer, and so I still work with that but mostly it manages itself now.
Okay. So you've done the very successful entrepreneurial track where, a lot of people confuse business ownership and entrepreneurship where, right, you're in there, you might be self-employed, you might be a business owner, but you're still the one making the donuts every day, right? And you're the one trading your time directly for dollars, as opposed to a true entrepreneur who's turning lead into gold, is creating a business, and you're backfilling it with systems and people and whatnot, so that ultimately your business grows, but you're killing yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, my ultimate goal, especially now, is really passive income, which is what you're talking about there, is making either a business or an investment that's going to allow me to receive income from it without putting my day-to-day hours for pay into it. So yeah, we really looked at that as realtors and started with some. We have commercial investments. We also have residential investments that are providing us some passive income. And my favorite is we also have short-term rentals in the vacation genre, which really makes me happy. It's one of my passions, always has been, is to travel and see the world
Right.
and be able to work from anywhere. And so this has really started increasing and giving us the ability to do so by adding more and more doors, whether they be, like I said, commercial, residential, or short term rental. That certainly has started to do well for me so that I can start to achieve that entrepreneurship goal of receiving money without having to put so many hours in.
Right. The Robert Kiyosaki goal, right?
That's it.
Move totally into the investment quadrant of life. So these VRBOs or VRBO short-term rentals, are you acquiring these in places that you personally like to go travel to?
But that was our initial situation. But then I realized that if I found a state or a city that it worked in, then rather than trying to reinvent the wheel in other cities or countries that I wanted to visit, that I should probably stick with the city that is making me a good return on my investment and just use that money to travel. So initially I had said, well, I'm just going to buy where I want to go visit. And I did that. We have some units in Vermont, we have Charleston, we have Connecticut, we have Virginia, and we have St. Martin. So we have some all over, but Charleston has been probably one of the best. And so we're actually in the process of doing another purchase down there because it really has a much longer time frame, much smaller, short season of less travel. So the low season there is only about a couple of months as opposed to Vermont, which has more like an 8-month low season and a 4-month high season. So, but I loved to ski at the time, and that was what we did. So, it was definitely you learn as you go. It's definitely as an entrepreneur, that's one thing I always say is I'm always learning. I will never stop learning and growing from others, from my own mistakes, from just reading, etc. So
Yeah. Oh, well, that's brilliant. So understanding and knowing that you're not the end all be all, even with the level of success you've attained, there's still something new to learn, right? To become better and
absolutely.
do more. Well,
Always.
you made a point there that I want to kind of circle back to, because I think it's how a business owner and entrepreneur thinks is like, well, initially I wanted to buy these homes where I like to vacate because, hey, it makes a lot of sense, right? I love to ski. I want a place in Park City. That's what I want to do. But you started to realize that economically the ROI wasn't there. The numbers didn't work. So you're like, okay, but the fact that you got in motion, you took action, right? You learned, okay, well, we're going to kind of figure this thing out as we go versus trying to sit back and figure it all out before you take any action, right?
Absolutely. In my day-to-day work as a realtor dealing with homeowners, you deal with that emotional side. When I deal with my investors, it's much different because you're just dealing with what is their goals from a financial standpoint. There's not a lot of emotions involved. So the deals become much different from a negotiation standpoint and also just from a standpoint of what tactics we use to get them motivated and moving forward towards their goal. So yeah, it's two different worlds that collide in one lovely industry of real estate.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So what were how are you or what lessons are you applying in now the fact that you're running real estate teams from all this experience you've accumulated, like the from the childcare centers that you still have going and the other various business you've had, you've learned principles. How are you applying those now in this new business? Well, it's not new, but this business that you're currently, the team leader in the of.
Well, I think that probably the biggest principle that I apply with training and teaching in our teams is it's not just about real estate. I teach marketing, I teach accounting, we teach personal growth. So it's about giving some of our agents the well rounded information that they need to be a successful entrepreneur, not just a person that sells real estate, because that's just one piece of it. There are so many other aspects that you have to master, from customer service and marketing, all the way to, just the day to day of properly negotiating and managing each transaction.
Right, right, because you really are an entrepreneur, right? So it's if you're just a salesperson, you're selling, hawking real estate, right? That's one thing. But if you're going to build a career in the future, then you got to think like the CEO of your own little business, right? Which could be a big business one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of skills that go into that we talk about planning and making sure that there is a clear set of goals, strategies, and reevaluation to make sure that your goals are being met. And if they're not being met, looking at the strategies that are necessary to get you there. And so we teach, the whole gamut of how to do that. It's not just, "Oh, well, I wanna sell a lot of houses." It's not an easy job. People think, "Oh, we just open doors and like HGTV, we walk in, we show them 3 houses and they buy it, and that's the end of
Yeah,
it." Well,
the rule of
obviously,
three.
that is not the case in real life. And, teaching people that there's a lot more to it is, probably my favorite part of what we do.
Is there a shock factor for new agents a lot of times?
Well, when I interview people to join our teams, I kind of give them the shock factor then and make sure that they're prepared for a different kind of business than what they may or may not expect. So, all of my agents, they all come from different backgrounds, different reasons why they jumped into this, and they all have different goals. And some of their goals are merely just to have more time freedom so they can take care of their children and have more freedom that way. And some of them have goals of, well, I want to reach, the top sales agent for the brokerage. And so depending on who they are, I work with their specific needs to reach just their goals, not my goals. The shock factor I give them is up front, telling them, you need to understand what you want. What's your why? Why are you getting into this business? And let's determine what your steps are going to be to get you to that
Mm.
point. And we don't accept everybody to join the team either, because we want a very cohesive team, one that's very supportive of each other. There's a lot of cutthroat real estate brokerages and agencies out there. I've been in business too long, and when I started this team, we decided I'm not doing that. I'm not having that kind of drama associated with it. So we interview pretty carefully.
Yeah. Well, again, another lesson from a seasoned entrepreneur I was taught many, many years ago. I've had a number of businesses myself, and it was hard for me to learn this lesson. I think it's one of the hardest is hire slow and fire fast.
That's a real smart concept to hang on to, and I happen to be one of those people that likes to support and support and support, but I certainly always believe that people, if you give them enough rope, they're gonna hang themselves. So, I always wanna be the person that's given them enough training and information and support that I know that it's not my fault when they do not succeed. It's that they're not implementing the things that need be. So I will probably err on the wrong side of that statement where I'll give too much time and opportunity to people, but I definitely am learning that up front you can save yourself a lot of that headache if you interview well and you're realistic about what your expectations are from the people that you work with. And it's also a nice thing in this industry, they're not employees. They are 1099 independent contractors. They run their own business. I'm just their guide. I'm the one that supports them. So it becomes a little less for me, so I like that.
Yeah, as opposed to your other business with all the locations and full-time employees and all that. That's a lot more commitment, right? When you bring someone onto that operation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And even after all these years, it's still difficult for me to hire slow and fire fast. I mean, it's it's one of those benchmarks that we certainly attain to, but achieving it is a different game. But I think the big takeaway though is the fact that it sounds like to me you're really upfront with people that you're interviewing so that they understand you're setting a proper expectation of it's not HGTV. You're not going to show three, you're going to sell, $1 million homes every week. And, yes, we know you want freedom and time with your family, but in order to get there, you're going to have to do a lot along the way and learn a lot to achieve that. It just doesn't fall out of the tree kind of
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
So
Anybody. Go
no, go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say, anybody that says it's easy, I challenge them to teach me that, because it is still, everything that you do is work other than passive income, which I'm very passionate about. And even that is, there's a price to pay for passive income, right?
Right. Right.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. No doubt. So, t what is looking back, you've had a lot of success over the years. What's a failure that I find that I mean, I think everybody goes through it, but entrepreneurs that make it in the long run, at some point along the way, there's some moment, the darkest before the dawn, they're like, I just don't want to do this anymore kind of thing, where you could easily walk away, but for some reason you powered through it and you came out the other side and you look back, and you're like, man, that was kind of the turning point for me. Is there any kind of seminal moment like that for you? And
you know, I have to say that I've been very fortunate that if I look at a specific business choice that we made for one of the businesses, yeah, I definitely saw a failure there. However, in my long-term career of what we've done, I luckily remained successful in not having any of those, well, I'm throwing up my hands and walking away from being an entrepreneur. But I did recognize, and with one of the businesses, that, you know what, this just is not working. It's just not going to turn itself around. I've put in every effort that I can. And as frustrating as it is, we have to let it go. And that's probably the hardest lesson that I ever learned, is that I'm not going to be successful every single time. I didn't want to accept that because I'm a high type A achiever. Like, I need to do it. Realizing that, we're spending money for what you end up calling a hobby because you weren't making money on this business. So it's not income, was probably the hardest lesson. But I learned pretty quickly that, if a business wasn't producing, then we need to make that decision of either, selling it or shutting it down or reinventing it, depending on what the case may be for each one.
yeah, that's a tricky thing. I mean, you're right. Being an achiever, you're driving forward, and we're always just drilled into our head, persistence, 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 grit, grit. And then you're like, well, that is true. But in some cases, you could be trying to scratch your way up the wrong wall, right?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
do you ever have you had or do you currently have like coaches or third party people that are talking into you to kind of help you see the forest for the trees because they're just like directly involved?
Yeah, I always look to other people for support. The only way I think as an entrepreneur you're going to be successful is by surrounding yourself with other successful people and getting their advice. And whether they're involved in your business or not, sharing your failures or your struggles and finding out what their suggestions are, always accepting the fact that you don't have all of the answers is probably the best lesson that I learned early on, that, I need to have good people around me. I don't know everything that's going to make this work. So coaching, I get general from like peers. I have not taken on any specific systems or anything like that that are out there. Um, Probably should at some point. However, I haven't yet.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, you obviously you've got systems and people in your life, and you've been able to navigate very well. I mean, a coach, I found that they're most helpful if you need someone to keep you accountable, to do what you said you're going to do, and also keep you sort of on track and ask the hard questions that you might not be willing to ask, even though you should ask. So if you have that in your life already, then that no sense in necessarily starting now. But I do love your approach and your philosophy. It sounds like to me, and the culture in your business, your as a team is we're going to grow, we're going to learn, we're going to expand, and the more we do that, the more we're going to be successful. and not just
Yeah.
in one dimension, but in multiple dimensions in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Larry, man, this has been great. I think we're coming up sort of on the end here. Do you have anything that you'd like to add or share that maybe we haven't chatted about today?
Um, and this is rare for me, but probably not really. I mean, I think that, we hit on some very good points. And for anybody that's looking to be an entrepreneur or jump into this crazy world of being your own boss, I think as long as you go into it with open eyes and realize that, you're going to work way more hours and harder in the beginning when you do that than it seems from looking in from the outside. I think a lot of people always have that perception that when you're a business owner or an entrepreneur that, oh, you've got all the time in the world and you don't have to put as many hours in. And it's just not true. I mean, I think that every successful entrepreneur I've ever been with, has a strong drive that used to make them work harder. We learn as we get older or we have more experience to work smarter and not harder, and certainly find ways to have that passive income where we're not actually trading our time for dollars, but it takes time to get to that point. And I think that that's the best lesson anybody that's looking to do this can understand ahead of time. It isn't easy, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. But if you don't work hard, you're not going to achieve what you want.
Well said. I don't think I could add anything to that. How do people get up with you when they want an awesome real estate agent or team for representation?
So we have a website, of course, theroyalteam.com, that is in Connecticut and Virginia. That's probably the easiest, or they can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, every social media we have, but that's the easiest way to find the Royal Team. And if you're looking for buying and selling and market updates, feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Larry, we'll get that in the show notes. And man, I really appreciate your time. It's been a great conversation today. A lot of fun.
All right. Thanks. Same to you.